me first. You use the phrase color silent. Is that from that Ryan article?
Yes, it is.
So they discern that from colorblind? Because I've never heard that term.
They didn't explain it in the article, but I would think color silent is more that they aren't being encouraged to talk about race. Like they are noticing those differences, but they're kind of noticing that nobody else does, so they're silent about it.
Right.
Which I think is different than colorblind, because that means they're not really noticing those differences.
Right. Or it's like an accident of what colorblind, how it would look.
Yes,
using
yes.
color silent. I hadn't heard that. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My question is a little bit more society based, right? So given what we're seeing about book banning, your book will probably be banned.
Yeah, that was a goal when I was writing this. When I heard how many books are being banned, I was like, I want a book that would make people who are banning books uncomfortable, because I think these things need to be talked about. It's really disappointing that that was something I had to take into consideration, because I don't see how it would be harming anybody. You're just learning about families, and I think by banning books, we're having a disservice to these children, because our job as teachers is to prepare them for the real world. And how are we preparing them if we're creating this bubble and they're not learning about everything that's out there? They're not learning that these families exist. Banning books doesn't mean that we're banning these types of families. We're not banning these types of relationships. And they're going to see it regardless, so why can't we teach them and have them learn to appreciate it? It's very disappointing.
My question is, you didn't refer to it in this presentation, but I know you did in your thesis, the idea of books being mirrors, windows, and doors. This is a question that I wrestled with, and I still wrestle with, and so this is not something that I'm expecting you to have like an instant answer for or anything, but just something I'm throwing out there. I think it's pretty easy for people to understand what it means for a book to be a window and what it means for a book to be a door, or sorry, a mirror. Door, I think, is a little trickier. And I'm wondering if in the process, I know you talked about Sims Bishop's metaphor a bit in your paper, and I'm wondering if you thought at all, what does it mean for a book to be a door, and how would you categorize your book with those different metaphors that Sims Bishop put out there?
I definitely think my book would be a mirror and a window. I think the difference with the door is that you're stepping into that person's experiences and their shoes, and they're kind of experiencing a day in that life. I think with a window, you're just watching from the outside, and with a door, you're getting to know their feelings, their emotions. You're really getting to understand what that person is experiencing. And I don't think that my book did that, and I don't think that's what I was trying to do, especially since it was for younger children. I think that doors for younger children are a bit harder. I think that a door for a children's book would look different than a door for an adult's book. I think that with a door into a child is they're walking into that experience and they're actually thinking about how that would be experiencing, like if they're learning about racism. A door would allow them to explore those feelings and emotions and how that would affect them. But a window is just them getting to see in from the outside. So in this book, they're just getting a glimpse of the different types of families and how that would look in a community. I didn't really go into the different emotions that maybe Evie was feeling, or maybe any of those children who were feeling who had that many different families. And I know that's not always as common to have that variety of families in one classroom. I think I use a little suspension of disbelief with that.
Well, it happens.
It happens, it does. But I think it's important that we understand that my book was not a door. And I think that's okay, that's not what I was going for.
But to go with what Dr. Jackson said, I think that that's a way in your future practice how you might meet people who have concerns about age appropriateness. Because often with books that introduce concepts, people are, I don't want my kid to feel, I don't want my kid to be exposed, and we all know that those things exist. But, you know, sometimes age appropriateness can be leveled by saying this is not a door. This is just something that reflects a lived experience that their kid is already exposed to. And because I'm an early childhood educator, I I don't want them necessarily to feel emotions they may not be ready for. So that's why I've chosen books that are more windows and mirrors instead of those that allow students to access feelings that they might not be emotionally or developmentally prepared for.
I completely agree with that, and I think that the banning of books, I went through a list of some of the most popular banned books, and it was mind-blowing that they were on the list. There was a book about 2 worms, they were genderless, and they were in love. That's it. And it was banned. And I don't understand. I don't understand the threat or what they're afraid of. I think exposure is different from those feelings, absolutely. But if we don't expose it to them, they're not being prepared for the world that they see. They're gonna see it regardless, and I think they should be exposed to it and have an understanding of it. And I think we're doing them a disservice by not doing that.
Well, were you tempted to, like, to me, to write a door story, you might have had to have really pulled a little more from your personal experience, like in a way that might have been more vulnerable. So, like, you used the phrase rare sighting, right? You didn't have seeing mixed race kids. But in your case, right, mixed race and Burmese, right? Because we look at the library, there's no books that feature that particular background, which really is tragic, right? That's not okay. But like if you were to try to write from a more like steeped in your particular cultural experience, like a family reunion story, like what do you think that task would be like to try to write, here's a mixed race character from a background that we're not seeing represented? Like how could you do it? Like what kind of story would you tell? Would it be too horrible?
I actually think that would be a really interesting story to write. I was fortunate enough to grow up with Burmese family around me, and my 2 cousins are also biracial. Their mom's white and their dad's Burmese. And so at least I had them with me when we were at those family reunions. Obviously, I had my parents. But I did notice that with their upbringing, they were definitely a bit more educated about the culture, which wasn't anyone's fault. I think they just asked more questions. I don't think I was as curious as I should have been as a child, and I think that's okay. It's not something you can control. But if I were to tell that story, I think I would dive deeper into my feelings and make it more of a door story, but in a child-friendly approach. Like maybe my character was feeling a little nervous, like which side does she feel like she belongs with more, and I hope that at the end she kind of found a peace with herself, that both of her parents' cultures make up who she is.
I'm just curious, what did Amazon say? Like, what's the page limit?
32.
Oh, that's easy. Just draw some more pictures and
Yeah.
do some text.
I know, I was like, right now in senior year, it is not time for me to have double the size of my book. But in the future, I would like to.
A wordless
finish that
page
up.
with a garden and keep going.
Right, make it a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go, that's right.
Any other questions, comments?
If you were to when you do publish this or put it in your classroom library, what would you want the inscription to read? Like to your reader.
I would say I would start off with, this is a story about a little girl growing up in a beautifully unique community, and she is learning about the different types of families in her classroom and how no one family is the same.